life, really. When Jack Shelley died last September at the age of 98, we lost a true broadcast pioneer. And we have the placards in the back of the room so that truly Jack is with us tonight as if he would not be with us in some way. And it is difficult to think that never again will we be able to rely on his wisdom and experience. Never again will we look out at this banquet and see him at a front table. Never again hear those great stories. I got an email the morning that Jack died from a very close friend of mine who lives in another state and always seems to know just what to say. She had heard about Jack's passing, and after a few proper notes of condolence, she wrote the following: "But what a life, though, really." And taken in that context, my sadness of what we had lost went away. Instead, I felt a greater appreciation for what we had. An amazing life and career, shared with thousands, first in the listening and viewing audience, and then in the classroom at Iowa State University, and for another quarter century in retirement each year at events like this. It's my privilege, in tribute, to share some highlights of Jack's professional career with you tonight, but first, I want to say a few words about Jack Shelley, the person. Many others in this room likely have better stories than I, and I'm sure we'll hear some of them after this banquet in the social time, but one story tells you who Jack Shelley was and why he was such an influence on this field. And it was at this very convention some years ago, and at the social hour, myself and a number of us were kind of hovering around Jack, trying to see if he'd sit at our table, because we knew it would be a wonderful evening if that were the case. And so a group of us, including Jack, it was 6 of us, sat at one of these tables. And already seated were 2 individuals. One, a young broadcaster, new to the field, first convention probably, and his wife. And we sit down and we start asking Jack to tell certain stories and trying to impress him that way, impress him with what we were doing, etc. And there was a lull, at which point Jack looked across the table, called the young broadcaster by name, and said, "Well, what are you doing this week? What is new in your shop? What is new in your town?" And that moment taught me an awful lot. It showed such graciousness to include everyone at the table in the conversation. And it showed curiosity, the hallmark of any great journalist. And it made that young broadcaster, who has gone on to be a yearly award winner at this convention, feel special. I mean, after all, this is the Jack Shelley, genuinely caring about what he did in his work. Curious, gracious, genuine. All words which well describe Jack Shelley, the man. Now, as for Jack Shelley, the broadcast journalist, I'll let you decide for yourself. But I'm guessing that as you now watch and listen to these examples, you'll find yourself saying, "What a life, really."
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jack Shelley, and these are the headlines in the news this noon.
This is Jack Shelley on Guam. The wire recording you are about to hear was made at a B-29 base somewhere in the Marianas.
Now, to all intents and purposes, the bulge has been wiped out, and ahead of us lies a part of Germany which has never been penetrated.
Hello, WHO. This is your war correspondent, Jack Shelley, reporting to you again through an Army mobile transmitter and the British Broadcasting Corporation. I'm speaking once more from somewhere in Holland. This war is full of ironies, and not the least is the fact that along most of this flaming Western Front, men are killing each other in some of the most serenely beautiful country in the world.
I was able to interview hundreds and hundreds of Iowa and Middle Western soldiers, and one of the greatest values, or one of the greatest encouragements I received from it, was to be told by these soldiers, "You can tell our folks back home roughly where we are and roughly what we're doing within the limits of security." And we can't tell our folks that.
It's a land of sharply climbing hills and swiftly descending valleys, of pastures and dense forests of pine, of curving, steeply graded, narrow roads and small rushing streams, cold, dark water racing and splashing over rocky beds. Think of the most beautiful Christmas card scenes you ever saw. Think of the most tranquil, snowy white etchings of winter wonderlands any artist ever drew. They're all here, here on a road that leads to war, a road that swarms with tanks and trucks and fighting men.
So they were so grateful to see us, those who were the reporters of the individual soldier, telling his folks back home. They were so grateful we were able to tell their mothers and their fathers, their loved ones, roughly what they were doing, where they were, and particularly how they were and what their morale was. It was a tremendous thing.
WHO became one of the very few radio stations in this country to have several war correspondents of its own overseas. I was one of them.
This is Jack Shelley on Guam. The wire recording you are about to hear was made at a B-29 base somewhere in the Marianas, where I attended one of the most absorbing press conferences of the Pacific War.
In 1953, there were about 20 of us chosen to be in a trench about 1.5 miles from one A-bomb when it exploded. And if my voice trembled as I told about what was going on, you can understand.
10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. There's the bright light with my eyes shut. I can see that tremendous light. The earth is shaking underneath me. Not to the... There's the sound. There is the tremendous sound. This trench is being filled with dust.
Now that's a thrill.
And so your first weeks in television after having been on radio are just really tremendously difficult. And you feel as though you are no longer a performer on your own. You're a performer who is involved with so many other people that what you do to become successful or to get your message across is not really your own doing anymore. You've got to work with all these other people, all these other mechanical factors, and only the combination of those meshing is going to make the thing come out right. You're no longer a one-man band.
The Brenton Bank people have chosen to waive their allotted time for their commercial messages tonight and have asked me to use that time in view of the fact this is the last of these newscasts I'll be doing under their sponsorship. Tomorrow night will be my final appearance on Channel 13. I'm joining the faculty of Iowa State University in Ames in September as a radio television teacher in the journalism department.
Had the most wonderful time with a great bunch of faculty people to work with and with a wonderful group of students. And it's so satisfactory to be able to say that I've got graduates of my program who are just all over the United States and some overseas who have come out of our program there. And it's been a wonderful kind of experience, and you still get letters from and have contacts with students who somehow think you did a little bit to help along the way. I'm terribly proud of what those students have meant to broadcasting and to me personally. What I think is one of the sad things about some aspects of journalism education today, and that is that practical experience is no longer viewed as being worth an advanced degree. And I know enough about people with advanced degrees to know that many of them could very, very much benefit for the practical experience that they lack.
You understand the creed of the journalist is, if he possibly can, to be objective, to tell the story as true to the facts as he can, and not to inject his own opinion. Nobody can do that perfectly, but if you're an honest journalist, you try to do it as best as you possibly can.
So you can see it's been one of the most satisfying kinds of career one could wish for. And now in my new career, I hope to train many young people for this same sort of opportunity. I'm sure they're going to enjoy it as much as I have, and I hope they'll find audiences as receptive as you have been to me. May I say to all of you, thank you very much.
Jack Shelley says, see you next weekend.